Welcome to See Beneath Your Beautiful, where guests share stories of adversity and perseverance, which inspire, encourage, and challenge us. We embrace these tough conversations, intimately exploring our loves, fears, and hopes with a delicious combination of depth and lightness.
I'm Travis Naught. I'm a writer in the Spokane area. I'm a 38-year-old quadriplegic who has never taken a free step. I was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy when I was 16 months old, got my first wheelchair at 18 months old, and my first electric wheelchair before I was 2. Spinal muscular atrophy is a degenerative physical disorder, but thankfully it only affects the skeletal muscles. My heart's doing fine, and at 38, I've defeated the outlook on my life about 3 times in age. So I've had adventures along the way, and I hope to have a whole lot more.
I've taken a photograph of you, and your parents were there helping you.
Yes.
It seems like, I don't know what the words are.
No, you're fine.
I wanted to say that you're lucky to have your parents, but lucky doesn't seem like the right adjective, but they seem very dedicated to you.
Lucky is one word, blessed, granted, and placed with a couple of the coolest supporters. They keep me as active as they possibly can. And most days that's enough. Other days, I wish it was a whole lot more.
I totally understand that. I just interviewed somebody. She's in her mid 40s and she has gone through 3 surgeries a year for the last 3 years and considers it a success to get out of bed each day now. So yeah. I know we all have our struggles, and it's especially hard now during COVID.
It was weird. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the lockdown. So for the first 18 months, maybe, I dealt with it better psychologically than I have the last couple of months. When the world was closed down and seeing everybody else freak out and try to deal with this new limitation, it didn't bother me so bad because I was so used to living limited anyway. Mm-hmm. But now that things are opening back up, and I love seeing the relief with people, the excitement that they have, or I can even understand a little bit of the thumb in the nose at the rules and, going against the rules. I find myself struggling more because my life hasn't changed, right?
Yeah.
And this comes up, we're recording this a little after the new year. Every New Year's, every January, I remember that life doesn't really change for me. And so I struggle with that during this month. But that being said, I always have fun things on the horizon and things I'm looking forward to, and just got to get through the down times.
I had a much harder time in 2021 than 2020. 2020 was just like, oh no, what's going to happen? But 2021 felt interminable.
It did, didn't it? We thought we'd made it through, and then all of a sudden, those of us who care about our fellow humans seem to be the ones that are struggling the most psychologically, which is a little unfair, I would say. We want the best, and we fear the worst.
You are an avid fisherman?
I am. I've got a tattoo of a halibut on my left shoulder.
Oh, cool.
You won't find many people with that marking. I've been to Alaska 6 times on fishing trips. We even did a family road trip across the country, and we were going to go tuna fishing in Maine, but the seas were too bad that day. So we fished for bass off the deck of a boat with a kite, which was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. When it's windy enough, you fish with a kite. Probably don't want to be out on the ocean.
Yeah. You have to type with talk.
I do.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So are you able to hold a fishing pole then?
I'm not. I am the world's crippledest director. I do a really good job of speaking to the movements and what I want to be done into existence. And the people that are around me are frequently surprised if they've never met me. The charter captains, they get blown away by this guy who can't physically maneuver, and my knowledge and knowing what needs to be done physically and relating that to whoever's helping me.
Are you an avid reader?
I am. And actually, Similar with the fishing, I have to have people turn my pages for me.
Oh, interesting.
So I'll sit down at Starbucks and make eyes with the baristas, and they come over and turn my page for me every few minutes. So
that's really great.
Yeah.
I love that because everybody's always saying how terrible everybody is. And it's nice to see that there's kindness.
It's unbelievable. Whenever somebody says, oh, the world's going to hell, I'm like, well, maybe, but it's not without good intention.
I really do think that. I think everybody's trying their best.
Yeah, I do too. Again, going back to COVID, when the mask regulations came into place, the store in town that scared me the most was the hardware store. I didn't go, I didn't have any reason to go out anyway. I'm a relatively at-risk person.
Mm-hmm.
But when I sat in the parking lot, it was like June 2020, and I saw 99% of the people wearing their masks. Now, about 10% of them had scowls on their face that you could see even through their mask. But most of the people, almost always, all of the people, cared enough about one another to do the right thing. Even if it's not that they wanted to or they agreed with it, they were doing it. And that's the thing we have to focus on more, is the larger percentage of right, and not focus so much on those one-offs.
Right. Not to disagree with you, but you must live in Washington and not Idaho.
You're right. You're right.
Because I live in Idaho and it was the Wild West over here. I don't understand. We're just a state away.
Yeah, a couple of minutes away even.
I don't want to let anybody know I live in Idaho.
Oh, well, your secret's safe with me.
Oh, good. Yeah, we won't reveal that.
All right.
That's interesting that I don't know if this would make it any better, but that you would prefer a book that you have to turn pages instead of like Audible where you can listen.
It's a degenerative disorder, again, what I have. So until about 8 years ago, I could turn my own page.
Oh, okay.
And then even as young as like growing up, going on road trips in my early teenage years, I would read a paperback book while we were driving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would tear through a page a minute. And if we're going a couple hours, it would be a couple books a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've built my brain to create the voices, to see the visuals, and to have the dialects translated in my own style. And I can't stand Audible for the most part. Listening to somebody else have the fun that my brain is so used to having, that's not my style.
And a narrator can ruin it. That's for sure.
They can. Alternatively, everybody I think has listened to a couple of Audible books, and we're on a podcast right now, so it's the medium. I like it when the author themselves are the narrator.
Right. My favorite book ever is Angela's Ashes. Have you read that one by Frank McCourt? And him reading it, his little Irish accent, just I love that. I love that book and I love that Audible. Awesome. So if you ever have to listen to an Audible, listen to Angela's Ashes.
I'll put it on my list.
Although it's pretty sad. It's a kind of a tragedy, but I like it anyway.
I just got done reading Grapes of Wrath, and
Oh, okay.
So here's another interesting thing. I've never reread a book.
Me either.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know another one of me existed.
I don't enjoy rereading a book or rewatching a movie.
Yeah, I'm doing that less and less. I'm watching a movie a week with a friend of mine for the last 3 years. And we haven't doubled up on any of our movies yet.
That's awesome.
Having never reread a book, Grapes of Wrath was a new thing for me. And that's a depressing damn book right there.
Yeah, it's depressing. Yeah. I did reread. I used to love the book called Gone to Soldiers, which is a really good book, I thought, until I reread it.
Oh.
When I went back to visit where I grew up, it's not the same. It's just better the first time. Everything's better the first time is what I think.
Nice. That's kind of a fun thing to put on the horizon. I do enjoy new experiences, so.
I like a road that I've never traveled down. When I went to Italy with my sister, I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know where we were staying. I didn't do any research. I really like being surprised.
Oh, very fun. Yeah, I have to do a little more planning than that.
Yeah.
The wheelchair and now the ventilator. 3 years ago, I ended up with a tracheostomy.
Oh.
That's tricky to have to know in advance. There will be a plug-in.
Do your parents help you a lot with all that, or do you do all that?
They do, yeah. So I live at home with my parents, and at 38, there have been 36 7.5 good years, but 6 months of bumpy road interspersed throughout. So
I see. Yeah.
they do a great job of helping me into bed at night and putting up with my eccentric bedtime schedules at times.
How is it eccentric?
Most nights, until the tracheostomy, my parents would go to bed and then I would holler out loud and mom would come in and put me to bed. And I would range from 11 o'clock to 2 in the morning, somewhere in those.
Mm-hmm.
The last 3 years, I've been a more structured, go to bed about 10 o'clock, 10:30. And that's nice because then mom will stay up, put me to bed, then she can go to bed. But it's weird having to have that synchronicity. And then when my brain decides that maybe his schedule isn't so fun, I'll stay up a little later and have to wake them up with a text or something.
Yeah. How do you feel about having to rely on your parents and the things that you must assume that you've missed out on? I was reading something you wrote about sex and your first kiss, your first 2 kisses.
Yeah, that article came out recently. That's fun. I enjoy writing. Even when it's about painful subjects, I try to put an interspersal of humor in it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear the chuckle in your voice when you talk about it.
I like that there was 2 in the same, you got to compare.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That was great. But how do you feel just about, I guess, the hand you've been dealt, having to rely on others and, just the things that you've missed out on?
It's a raw deal, but at the same time, I'm constantly seeking out new and exciting through that. So just because I can't walk into a bar and brush against someone, and spark the flame, frequently when I'm out and about, people come to me and I generally try to keep a smile on my face. I've had people approach me and just say that, hey, thanks for smiling. And
Mm-hmm.
I've got a hell of a foul mouth. So it's pretty fun when I'm out and about to shock someone with a statement every now and then.
Yeah. I can see how that would be fun.
It is. I wear brightly colored shoes, even though I don't walk. Right after COVID, I bought myself some avocado print shoes.
Uh-huh.
And it's fun that people will notice those right away. And I just try to keep the positive mindset. And I'm a fairly positive guy, even though I struggle with my depressions.
Yeah.
When I'm alone at home, that's the hard part. And I'm really good at leaving that hard part at home when I go out for any outing.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the grocery store, have a good time, make somebody smile who's got their own boring job in life. So
the goal of this podcast is to offer people hope that no matter what you've gone through, that there is a positive perspective because you're alive.
Exactly.
There's the preciousness of just breathing. And so how did you get there, though? How do you maintain your positivity? Or is there something you practice to help you?
It's a really good question. The maintenance of my positivity, I think, kind of reaches back to the nature versus nurture debate. It is in my nature to be positive. I don't enjoy being grumpy. I don't like going around sad and frustrated. And so I find every little outlet I can to grab onto a more positive outlook. And then the nurture part of it, my support structure, my parents and my friends. Last night there was a football game on TV and we had 6 friends come over and we ate ribs and watched football. And while maybe I wanted to be somewhere else in reality, there are relationships and people that are happy sitting at home staring into each other's eyes. There's always that. I would love that. But since I don't have it, I try not to focus on the what if and just enjoy what I do have.
Tell me about your writing.
I've got a poetry volume on the market titled The Virgin Journals, which cracked people up. You throw the word virgin around and all of a sudden there's some very odd reactions. But it was my first foray into writing. So that was a double entendre because it does talk about the fact I've been a celibate human and not by choice so much. So that poetry volume came out 10 years ago now. And I was lucky enough to not have it be something I had to pay for. Somebody paid me and bought my writing from me, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I've got a novel out called Joyride. And that came out 7 years ago. A fun romp story, pulp style I sat down and I had no idea what I was going to write about. I just started typing, and before I knew it, there were 60,000 words on the page. So,
oh, that's cool.
yeah, it was 28 days of writing. That was fun. And then I have short stories and articles and single poems. And during 2021, actually, I did 28 photo poems. Yourself as a photographer understands what a visual image can relate. And then the trick with writing a poem about a photo is not necessarily describing what's on the scene, but allowing it to communicate a story. And each of these poems featured a woman in a scenic location, not looking at the camera. It was a little terrifying to write that because it can be deemed creepy when you're looking at pictures of women in scenery. But I used each of those poems as a gift to the woman, and I knew 24 of them personally.
Oh, cool.
I gave each of them the poem via email, and it sparked good dialogue and enjoyable memories. And each of them was very gracious to call the writing good.
Awesome.
Makes me feel a little bit vindicated that I'm not just babbling into nothingness.
Well, you're not. You're a great writer. I've read some of the things. Where can people find those images?
So I've only released the one. I do have a blog. It's Naught, spelled Naught, a poet.blogspot.com. The spelling of my name, Naught, I frequently tell people it's like naughty without the Y. Because I don't ask questions. That's
That's funny.
I've done a lot of camping in my life, which is an odd thing I've been thinking about more and more.
Yeah.
As a man in an electric wheelchair, it's odd to maybe walk through the woods and see me, listening to a CD player underneath a tree, taking a nap. But boy, those were some wonderful times. We would camp up by Mount Adams, about 17 miles from the nearest shower. So we were way out in the woods.
Wow.
I would take my chair up into the huckleberry bushes, and we would have a good time.
That's so good. Is this we meet you and your parents?
Me and my parents and my dad's extended family.
Oh, cool.
I believe one year we had 42 people, 15 dogs, 2 horses, and a cat or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your attitude towards everything.
I went and spoke at Lewis Clark State College a few years ago. I've got a master's degree in sports psychology, and I went down there to speak to a sports class that was taught by one of my friends. And I told him, and I haven't been asked back since, so maybe it was the language, but everybody's got shit in their life, right? And my shit looks different than your shit, but it's still shit. So there's no reason and definitely no quarter in comparing worse or better, because it just is what it is, which is a phrase I hate. It is what it is. It's a terrible phrase.
Byron Katie teaches to love what is. She says that you're suffering if you're fighting what is.
Yeah. It's a very Eastern way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm.
I've looked into those methods a bit. I'm a huge Jack Kerouac fan.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually translated some of the Buddhist texts and dove into them really deep in a book called Some of the Dharma. It was intense. I didn't even get all the way through that book, and I've read every one of his books.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, difficult to constantly circle those ideas in your brain and stay so focused that you're not allowing maybe the wonder of the world. And I prefer to dive into the wonder of the world a little more.
What do you think is a misconception about you that people assume about you that is wrong?
Try really hard not to be readable, right? I like switching up my order at the coffee shop. I like having a wide knowledge base. I can be the filthiest guy in the room at a comedy show, or I can be the saintliest guy at a church service.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot of different communities out there that think I am only one way.
Yeah.
And the reality of me is I'm a multifaceted guy. I switch back and forth between groups because I enjoy learning the most about the world that I can.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope that most people know that I'm not unilateral. So much of my writing is about not having had sex that I hope people don't think I like not having had. That's not the point of that. I hope also that it's not what people think that's all I think about, because I think there's so much going on in the world that to focus on one thing too long is to be truly isolated. And I don't want to do that.
That's beautiful. Do you feel like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you feel like a man who happens to not be able to move his body, a complex person that also has trouble moving his body?
You hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Just that simple.
So my bio in the single poems that get published in little journals, I start out, because it always asks you to do it third person, which is a very weird way to write about oneself.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Naught is a 38-year-old man who happens to be a quadriplegic. That's my opening line in my bio. The person first and then the circumstances. Yeah.
I've learned that talking through this podcast, actually. I mentioned you once and I was corrected because I said you were a quadriplegic and they said, no, you're a person who happens to be. And that was great.
Right.
I really love learning that because I'm not what I do or what I look like or any of those things. I'm complex. And so it's good to be reminded that we're all multifaceted.
I spent 10 years working with a basketball team.
Tell me about that.
When I graduated high school, I graduated from a town of 3,000 people in Goldendale, Washington. Small high school, I graduated with 84 people. And all of my friends happened to be over 6 feet tall. And in a small town like that, that meant they were all basketball players. And a couple of them went and played junior college basketball, but I happened to be the only one to go Division I. So the guy in the wheelchair happened to be the guy that got the Division I basketball experience.
Well, excuse my ignorance. How does that happen? I mean, if you can't use your hands?
It's a good question because sort of like the fishing that we talked about, right?
Oh.
My knowledge and understanding around the sport and my ability to convey to others what needs to be done made me a valuable asset. And when I got to Eastern, the high school coach got me in touch with the college coach. And I was accepted among the players as part of the team. And I worked my way up from student manager. I was in the locker rooms before the games and became very dear friends with all of the players. And then after 10 years, I had moved to graduate assistant and then administrative assistant, worked under 3 head coaches, and I still communicate with several of the players on a weekly basis.
Awesome. Well, when we took your picture, I remember there was a basketball and a fishing pole, but I forgot about that.
Those 2 parts of my life are things that, you asked about what people might not expect. I suppose that's a couple of big ones.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're defying preconceptions.
It's fun to do. It's fun to do.
You said you can be the dirtiest guy at comedy. Have you done stand-up?
So I have performed once in an event called Drink and Debate. Teams of people will get together and have some beers and be given a topic from the host, and they have to debate pros and cons of that topic. And I won my 2-minute match against the seasoned comedian that I went up against. And my argument was supposed to be in favor of having food at a strip club. And the other guy had to argue against having food at a strip club. After 2 minutes of arguing, the audience deemed that I was the funnier, or at least the more correct of the two. That was my one foray into stand-up comedy. Yeah.
I see. And is the argument for food at a strip club that they'll stay longer?
It's a wonderful distraction to focus on when your family member is the one stripping. Yeah.
Yep, that's a good one.
Yeah, I would much rather look at my French fries than my sister. So, yeah.
I've been to a strip club once, but my daughter loves going to strip clubs.
They're very affirming places for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Less fear, less self-consciousness.
Oh, yeah.
Generally, it's where the people going maybe have some odd ideas about what they're going to see. And the people working, when they do it correctly, they're just having a fun time.
Right.
Yeah. And they're making damn good money doing that.
That's what my daughter said. She said, just for having a female body, well, I mean, a perfect, a well-maintained female body. But she said, they make a lot of money. She just came back from Atlanta. And in Atlanta, they're like really high-end strip clubs.
Yeah. I've never been to an Atlanta strip club, nor a Portland strip club, but apparently Portland, Oregon and Atlanta, Georgia are the two strip club meccas of the United States.
I'm the cool mom because, I didn't go though. So I'm not the cool mom. But I went for my daughter's 18th birthday, I took my 18-year-old and my 22-year-old to Portland. So my 18-year-old could go to a strip club, but they went together. I didn't go. I stayed in the hotel room and went to bed.
There's other things to do in Portland.
Well, we didn't talk about comics.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
As we're sitting here visiting, if I look down at my computer desk, I see 11 of them laid out that I have to price so I can put in my vendor booth. I run a vendor booth in Post Falls, Idaho at Premier Vendor Mall, and I probably process 2,000 comic books a month. I've been working with comic books and collectibles for 7 or 8 years just because I really enjoy them. Mm-hmm. It's the distraction that got me through COVID, really. Waking up on a daily basis, not being able to go out into the world. I could sit at home with my collectibles, and I buy collections from people. We couldn't go into a store for a while because we didn't know if we were going to die, but I always felt pretty safe meeting somebody outside, maintaining a social distance and buying boxes of comics from them. I did that, and the last couple of years I've gotten into it. I go to shows, I sell at Spokane Comic Con, and this year I'm going to Boise to sell at their Comic Con, and that's the absolute most fun because I don't have to travel around the floor to look at everything. Everybody at those conventions comes to me, and
cool.
I set up a booth with 10,000 comic books, and I get a chance to be funny and smile and interact, and also be a bit of a nerd because I get to tell them what I know and think, and they're always willing to share what they know and think. So
when you go to these things, does that mean your parents are helping you?
It does. So my dad got me into sports cards as a young kid, and we dealt with buying and selling those for many years. But I wanted something different, and I've always been a bit of a nerd, and not in a Dungeons and Dragons sort of way, but that's something I need to do. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yeah. Well, I haven't either, but I was going to ask you, I don't know if this is possible for you, but have you ever done like a VR headset?
I never have. I think it might be possible, but I wouldn't be able to, move my arms to position
use the controllers.
Sticks. Yeah.
The reason I thought of it was because they have like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of game in there.
Really?
I wonder if there's a way that you could do VR because it's fascinating. Like I played chess with my husband the other day in VR.
Really?
It's so
That's
cool.
very cool. And were you the queen, Hera? That's what I wanted to know.
Well, yeah, no, I had him surrounded and then somehow lost. I don't know what I did. I made one wrong move and it was all over. I was like, how did this happen? I was so feeling pretty good about myself. Are your parents into comic books? Are they fishermen, or do they have to like what you like?
They don't. Thankfully, Dad likes enough of what I like that he and I are pretty compatible.
Oh, good.
And Mom doesn't dislike any of those things. Last year, on my most recent trip to Alaska, a couple of sets of family friends went with us.
Okay.
So it was me and Mom and Dad and 2 of Dad's high school friends and one of my friends. Everybody had enough time and space to do their own thing around the common goal of having a fishing trip. So
that's really great.
And it was wonderful because we went to a little town called Wrangell, Alaska. I think there's 1,800 people that live there. We were there 4 days. I think we saw everyone twice. By the end of the trip, I was happily flirting with both the handicapped bus driver and one of the coffee shop girls. And I got to know them. The bus driver, married with children, was very polite, shook my hand very slowly, kissed me on the head, and we took off from our life. So
that's awesome.
It was fun. It was fun.
Have you ever met Or like even on Facebook groups or groups, are you friends with anybody else who is a quadriplegic, or is that how you say it?
It is, yeah. So quadriplegic means no use of arms or legs.
Okay.
Many times you'll see people riding around in push wheelchairs that they use their arms.
Oh, yeah.
The appropriate terminology there would be paraplegic.
Okay.
So growing up with muscular dystrophy, I would go to a summer camp every year for folks with muscular dystrophy. And a lot of those kids, because they were kids, we were all kids back then, just aren't around anymore. And I think me and two other guys that I went there with are the only three I can think of right now that are still kicking from my childhood.
Yeah. My first boyfriend just passed away. Another boyfriend passed away recently. It's just a crazy thing as you get older that it's just sad when somebody from your youth passes away is what I'm saying. I understand that.
It's a trip, right? Like
yeah.
Survivor's guilt is a real thing, but then, not having anything to do with the circumstances that got them, no longer alive. I can't be too guilty about it because I've got my own life to live, damn it.
I'm so happy to know you and that you're just totally living your life and not letting your circumstance keep you down.
Well, thank you.
And not to compare, like you're saying, but people with a lot less to complain about complain a lot more.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's just all about outlook. You see successful people that whine, you see unsuccessful people that are happy, and I can't explain it. I'm glad to be one of the guys that I am rather than miserable.
Yeah. And, we all do have our traumas and what is hard for us, and not to take away from anybody's experiences.
Yeah.
It's just also a breath of fresh air to talk with you.
Thank you, Hera. I appreciate it. I did have a funny experience the other day. I went downtown to the Spokane River Park Square, and for years now, I can't shake hands with people. Because when my right arm is situated on my remote, if it's moved, we could have a real problem, chair running all over the place. So I've taken to telling people that, like a shoulder bump is the best. Instead of a fist bump, just bump my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't explain it well enough to the guy, I don't think, because he shook my shoulder like he shook my hand.
That's funny.
Yeah. And funny, there was no harm whatsoever, no foul. And it was like, yeah, sometimes I need to be a little more clear.
Awkward moment.
It was. He was confused, but he grabbed my shoulder and shook it like he was shaking my hand. So.
That's funny. Do you ever feel like people are nervous around you?
Rarely. Because when I feel somebody is nervous around me, I try to tackle that hurdle first. So if I'm in a group and there's somebody that's questionable or taken aback, I hit it head on. I don't want to be the confusing part of any mechanism.
I have to be honest that I was very nervous to photograph you.
Yeah.
Well, because I didn't know what you could and couldn't do. And I didn't know you at all before we just scheduled the photograph. We just somehow agreed to it. And I didn't know if you were able to speak or not. And I was very nervous and instantly wasn't. The minute I met you and your parents, I was instantly not nervous. But I was nervous that you wouldn't be able to communicate with me, I think.
I think communication. So another thing we haven't talked about at all is dating. As a man who is unhappy enough being single, but also very aware of the way I present, and I'm probably not going to end up with somebody falling in love at first sight with me. So learning to care about someone before going into more trivial manners is difficult. And so the thing I always try to do first in any one-on-one situation is lighten the mood.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk about death. I went on one date. My God, her cousin, a similar wheelchair user as I am, but a little more physically capable. He drives his own vehicle with hand controls.
Mm.
And we were on the date like 20 minutes before I started talking about how that would scare the hell out of me. And, it scared me that this guy was one day going to end up in a ditch because his body just decided, well, that's the last time I can do that.
Yeah.
We had a good time. We went to a concert, and now she lives in Nashville and makes music with her husband, and they go on tour. So I've been close to the right person a couple of times, but I know that my situation is difficult to deal with. It's just about having those fun experiences, going out and enjoying yourself.
Yeah. Are you saying that to her was inappropriate or off-putting to her?
And, maybe not off-putting, but certainly not conducive to wanting to be around somebody with a more positive outlook, right?
I'm just thinking when I was dating, because I've lost both my parents and my mother when I was only 18, I always asked everybody, especially I was in my 40s, are your parents still alive? And I remember a girlfriend being horrified that was my first question, or one of my first questions, but I thought it was a pretty valid question, but maybe it was totally off-putting.
I don't know. I think diving in deeper is not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, that's what I like. So
yeah. And another friend of mine recently reminded me, because growing up and now being in, middle age, 38 is definitely a middle-aged age.
Yeah.
I mentioned the idea of being turned on by someone recently, and it put her off completely.
Oh.
And have known her, and we're still friends for years. But when that turnoff happened, I felt like I was the one to blame. And my friend reminded me, my other friend, being simpatico with someone, finding that good means you're going to have to be an honest version of yourself.
Right.
And so when I was honest and it was not reciprocated, that was just another example of something that wasn't meant to work out.
Right. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It's not necessarily a reflection on you.
Let's hope not.
Yeah. People are meant to be or they're not. I really think that's true.
Fate is a fickle thing.
Yeah. I was very worried about turning 46 my entire life because my mother died at 46.
Okay.
And so I kind of had this, not a doomsday attitude, but I was worried about being 46, even though I had two sisters who had passed the mark and were fine. But I met my husband right before I turned 46, and I've been happy with him now for 8 years. And so you just never know, like you don't know what's around your corner. And so I'm glad that, you're constantly searching for new things and having new experiences. And I hope she's around the corner for you.
Thank you, Hera. So do I. Wake up, miles 5, 9, 7, miles click, go to sleep.
Thanks for your ratings and reviews. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Stay tuned.
Is it Hera or Hara? I hope I didn't mess it up.
It doesn't matter, but it's Hara, like happy and hat.
Yeah, Hera. Okay.
Everybody on the West Coast, which is where I live.
Hara.
It's horrible.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Well, I hope I got it right. And I was conscious of it too. I was like, oh shit, this isn't a no-brainer. I don't know.